I stood frozen, the world crumbling around me as I watched Derek's lips locked with Amanda's in a passionate embrace. My heart shattered into a million pieces, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife ever could. "Derek, how could you? After all we've been through?" I choked out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and utter devastation. Amanda pulled away from Derek, her red lips curled into a smug grin. "Oh, he's mine now, Lily. You're just outdated." Her words stung like venom, each syllable twisting the knife deeper into my soul. I had dedicated my life to this man, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions to support his career and raise our family. And this was how he repaid me, by throwing it all away for a young, vapid thing like Amanda. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights at the office, the unexplained expenses, the distant looks he'd give me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. But I had been too blinded by love and loyalty to notice the cracks forming in our once perfect marriage. "Get out," Derek spat, his eyes cold and unrecognizable. "You're making a scene." I wanted to scream, to cry, to hurl every insult and accusation I could muster at them both. But I found myself paralyzed, my throat constricted by the weight of my shattered hopes and dreams. With what little dignity I had left, I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I made my way out of the office, I couldn't help but wonder where it had all gone wrong. Just that morning, I had awoken before dawn, as I did every day to prepare Derek's favorite breakfast and ensure his suit was pressed to perfection. It was a routine I had followed for decades, a labor of love that had once brought me joy. But now, as I looked back on the sacrifices I had made, the countless times I had put his needs before my own, I felt a bitter taste of regret lingering on my tongue. How could he do this to me? To us? As I stepped out into the cool morning air, the weight of his betrayal finally hit me full force. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting, as I made my way to the car. I had always prided myself on being a strong, resilient woman, but in that moment I felt utterly broken. The man I had loved and trusted with every fiber of my being had shattered my heart into a million pieces, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to put it back together again. The office became a battleground, with Amanda asserting her dominance like a lioness staking claim over her territory. Every interaction felt like a thinly veiled attack, her words laced with venom and hidden jabs. "Lily, darling, have you considered retiring?" she would say, her saccharine tone dripping with condescension. "You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think it's time to let the younger generation take over?" I would force a tight-lipped smile, swallowing the bitter retorts that threatened to spill from my lips. But with each passing day, it became increasingly difficult to maintain my composure. Derek, once my unwavering ally, seemed to be under Amanda's spell. He would nod along with her suggestions, his eyes glazed over as if in a trance. It was as if the man I had loved and built a life with had been replaced by a stranger. "Did you see the new marketing campaign Amanda put together?" He would gush, completely oblivious to the way his words cut me like a knife. "She's a real visionary." I wanted to scream, to shake him, and remind him of the countless nights we had stayed up late, dreaming of building this business together. But the words stuck in my throat, replaced by a bitter taste of betrayal. Nights became a blur of loneliness and heartache. While Derek was out working late with Amanda, I would sit alone in our once happy home, surrounded by the ghosts of memories past. Flashes of our struggling years would haunt me, the countless sacrifices we had made, the dreams we had deferred, all in the hopes of building a better life for ourselves and our family. And now it felt like all of that had been for nothing. "You're being paranoid, Lily," Emma would say, her voice laced with concern. "Derek loves you. He would never do anything to hurt you." But the evidence was mounting, and no amount of reassurance could ease the gnawing doubt that had taken root in my heart. Unexplained expenses, late nights at the office, the way Derek's eyes would linger a little too long on Amanda's form, it all painted a picture that I could no longer ignore. And then the final blow came. It was a lavish office party, one that Derek and Amanda had planned without so much as a word to me. As I stood in the corner, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine, I watched as they moved through the crowd like a perfectly choreographed dance. Amanda's laugh rang out like a bell, her head thrown back in exaggerated mirth, and Derek, my Derek, looked at her with a hunger that I had never seen before. It was in that moment that the last shreds of my denial crumbled away, leaving me raw and exposed to the harsh reality of their betrayal. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating further and further into the shadows, until I could no longer bear the sight of their happiness at my expense. With tears streaming down my face, I slipped out of the party and into the cool night air, my heart shattered into a million pieces. Derek and Amanda's relationship became more brazen, as if they were flaunting their indiscretion for all to see. The once subtle glances and lingering touches gave way to outright public displays of affection that left me reeling. "You two make me sick," I spat one day, unable to hold back the bile rising in my throat. Amanda merely laughed, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on Derek's arm. "Oh, Lily, don't be bitter just because you're past your prime." Derek said nothing, his eyes downcast like a scolded child. It was as if he had become Amanda's puppet, dancing to her tune without a shred of remorse. The office became a battleground, with Amanda taking every opportunity to assert her dominance over me. She would casually undermine my decisions, questioning my judgment in front of clients and colleagues alike. "Lily, darling, are you sure that's the best approach?" she would say, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe we should let the younger, more innovative minds take the lead on this one." And Derek, the coward, would nod along, his silence cutting deeper than any words ever could. It was during one particularly heated exchange that the final blow came. Amanda had once again overstepped her boundaries, belittling me in front of the entire staff. "Face it, Lily, you're a relic of the past," she sneered. "It's time for you to step aside and let the new generation take over, starting with Derek." That was the final straw. Years of pent-up frustration and anger bubbled to the surface, and before I knew it, I was unleashing a torrent of words that I could never take back. "You think you're so special, Amanda?" I snarled, my voice trembling with rage. "You're nothing but a cheap, home-wrecking tramp who's using her looks to get ahead." The room fell silent, everyone's eyes trained on us like spectators at a gladiator match. Derek's face had drained of color, his mouth hanging open in shock. Amanda, for once, was speechless. Her perfectly sculpted mask of confidence had slipped, revealing the insecure, desperate woman beneath. In that moment, I felt a surge of power coursing through my veins. For too long, I had allowed myself to be diminished, to be made to feel insignificant in my own life. But no more. With a newfound sense of determination, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the office, leaving a trail of stunned silence in my wake. As I drove home, the adrenaline coursing through my veins gave way to a profound sense of clarity. I had spent too long living in Derek's shadow, sacrificing my own dreams and aspirations for the sake of his success. No longer. From that moment on, I vowed to take back control of my life, to reclaim the power that had been stripped away from me piece by piece. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a force within me that they could never hope to contain. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready for war. The extravagant office party was the final nail in the coffin of my shattered marriage. As I stepped into the lavishly decorated ballroom, the weight of Derek and Amanda's betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. They were the center of attention, basking in the adoration of their colleagues and clients, like royalty holding court. Amanda's sequined dress clung to her body like a second skin, her perfectly coiffed hair and makeup a stark contrast to the haggard, defeated woman staring back at me in the mirror that morning. "Lily, darling, you made it," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were starting to worry you wouldn't grace us with your presence." Derek remained silent, his eyes averting mine as if he couldn't bear to look at me. The coward. "Of course I wouldn't miss this celebration," I replied, forcing a tight smile that felt more like a grimace. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating to the fringes, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine as I watched Derek and Amanda work the room like seasoned performers. They were a well-oiled machine, finishing each other's sentences and basking in the adulation of their adoring fans. It was sickening. At one point, I caught Amanda's eye from across the room. Her perfectly painted lips curled into a smug grin, as if to say, "I won. He's mine now." I wanted to scream, to hurl my glass at her and wipe that smug expression off her face. But I knew that would only give her the satisfaction she craved. So I did the only thing I could. I left. I slipped out of the party unnoticed, my heart heavy with the weight of my shattered dreams. As I made my way to my car, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled forth, hot and unrelenting. It was over. Derek had made his choice, and it wasn't me. The drive to Emma's was a blur, the streetlights blending together in a haze of grief and betrayal. By the time I arrived, I was a shell of a woman, hollowed out and broken. Emma took one look at me and immediately ushered me inside, her arms enveloping me in a warm embrace as I sobbed uncontrollably. "It's over, Em," I choked out between gasps. "Derek, he chose her." Emma's face hardened, her eyes burning with a protective fury I had never seen before. "That bastard," she growled, her grip on me tightening. "I'll kill him." I shook my head, too drained to even entertain the thought of vengeance. "It's not worth it," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. I need to get away from all of this." And so, with Emma's unwavering support, I packed what little belongings I had and moved into her spare room. It was a temporary solution, but it was the only thing keeping me afloat in the midst of my personal tsunami. In the days that followed, I became a ghost, a mere shadow of the woman I once was. I stopped returning Derek's calls, stopped going into the office, stopped caring about anything beyond the basic necessities of survival. It was as if I had retreated into a cocoon, shutting out the world and all its cruelties as I licked my wounds and tried to piece myself back together. But as the weeks turned into months, a fire began to ignite within me, a burning desire for retribution, for justice, for the sweet taste of revenge. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a sleeping giant, and I was determined to make them pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation they had inflicted upon me. The battle had only just begun. The fire that had been ignited within me burned brighter with each passing day, fueled by the sting of Derek and Amanda's betrayal. I knew that I couldn't let them get away with what they had done, not just to me, but to the life we had built together. It was Emma who first suggested seeking revenge. "They can't just treat you like that and get away with it," she fumed one night over glasses of wine that had become our nightly ritual. At first, I dismissed the idea, too consumed by my own pain and heartbreak to even entertain the thought of retaliation. But as the weeks dragged on and the humiliation of my public ousting sank in, a newfound determination took root. It was then that I reached out to Owen, an old high school friend who had always had a knack for storytelling and technology. If anyone could help me expose Amanda and Derek for the snakes they truly were, it was him. "So let me get this straight," Owen said, his brow furrowed as he nursed a beer across from me at our favorite dive bar. "You want to take down your lying, cheating husband and his mistress?" I nodded, my jaw set with grim resolve. "They think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming." A slow grin spread across Owen's face, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "All right, Lily. I'm in. Let's make these assholes pay." From that moment on, Owen became my co-conspirator, my partner in crime. We spent countless hours huddled over his laptop, scouring the internet for any shred of dirt we could find on Amanda's past. And boy, did we hit the jackpot. It turned out that Amanda was a serial homewrecker, leaving a trail of broken homes and shattered lives in her wake. She had a pattern, seducing wealthy, successful men, leeching off of them until they had nothing left, and then moving on to her next victim. "This is gold, Lily," Owen crowed, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he compiled our findings. "We're going to bury that bitch with her own past." With each new revelation, my thirst for vengeance grew stronger. I wanted the world to see Amanda for the manipulative, conniving snake that she truly was. And Derek? He was going to get a front-row seat to the destruction of his precious mistress. We started small, leaking snippets of information to local gossip blogs and forums, watching with glee as the whispers and rumors began to swirl. It was like throwing a match onto a pile of kindling, the flames of scandal licking at Amanda's carefully cultivated image. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see them burn. So we took it a step further, creating an anonymous website dedicated to exposing Amanda's sordid past. We posted screenshots of her past conquests' social media accounts, detailing the heartbreak and financial ruin she had left in her wake. And then we waited. At first, the reactions were muted, a few raised eyebrows, a few hushed whispers, but then, like a wildfire, the scandal took on a life of its own. Suddenly, Amanda's name was on everyone's lips, her once pristine reputation tarnished beyond repair. I could see the cracks beginning to form in her perfect facade, the strain of the mounting pressure wearing her down. And Derek? Well, he was finally starting to see the true nature of the woman he had risked everything for. As the fallout intensified, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was just the beginning, a mere taste of the retribution that was to come. Amanda and Derek had made the mistake of underestimating me, of thinking that I would simply roll over and accept their betrayal. But they were about to learn a valuable lesson. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I was just getting started. The fallout from our anonymous leaks was swift and merciless. Amanda's carefully curated image began to unravel at the seams, the skeletons in her closet finally coming to light. At first, she tried to brush it off, putting on a brave face and denying the allegations. But as more and more damning evidence surfaced, her defiant facade crumbled like a house of cards. It was during this time that I started receiving frantic calls from Derek, his once confident tone replaced by a desperate pleading. "Lily, you have to help me," he begged, his voice strained. "This whole thing is spiraling out of control. Amanda's past. I had no idea." I couldn't help but revel in his misery, savoring the sweet taste of his comeuppance. "What's the matter, Derek?" I taunted. "Not so enamored with your precious Amanda anymore?" He fell silent, and I could almost hear the shame radiating through the phone. It was a delicious feeling, watching the man who had so callously discarded me squirm under the weight of his own mistakes. But as satisfying as it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see Amanda brought to her knees to watch as her world crumbled around her. It was Owen who suggested taking things a step further, arranging a face-to-face confrontation that would force Amanda to confront the consequences of her actions. "Meet me at the old parking garage downtown," he texted me one night, the cryptic message sending a thrill of anticipation coursing through my veins. When I arrived, the dimly lit garage was deserted, save for a lone figure leaning against a sleek sports car. As I drew closer, the figure stepped into the light, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Amanda, her once flawless makeup smeared and her eyes rimmed with red. She looked broken, a far cry from the poised and confident woman who had stolen my husband's heart. "You think you can just tarnish my image and get away with it?" she spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "Oh, Amanda, this is just the beginning. You're going to lose everything you've schemed for." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear cross her features, but just as quickly it was replaced by a steely resolve. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed, taking a step closer. "I'll destroy you, Lily, you and anyone else who gets in my way." I held my ground, matching her icy glare with one of my own. "Bring it on, sweetheart. I'm not the one with a closet full of skeletons." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her seething in my wake. It was a small victory, but it was enough to fuel the fire burning within me. From that point on, the gloves were off. Owen and I ramped up our efforts, leaking more and more damning information about Amanda's sordid past. We exposed her financial indiscretions, her web of lies and manipulation, leaving no stone unturned. And as her world crumbled around her, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was justice, plain and simple, a reckoning for all the pain and humiliation she had inflicted upon me and countless others. But even as Amanda's empire crumbled, there was still one final piece of the puzzle left to fall. Derek himself. He had been my partner, my confidant, my everything. And in the end, he had chosen the path of betrayal, casting me aside like a worn-out relic. Well, no more. It was time for Derek to face the consequences of his actions, to see the true monster he had aligned himself with. And I was going to make sure he had a front-row seat to the destruction. The endgame was in sight, and I was ready to unleash hell. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and I was ready to unleash hell upon Derek and Amanda. With Owen by my side, we had orchestrated a showdown that would bring their web of lies and deceit crashing down around them. It all came to a head at a pivotal company meeting where the board of directors and key clients had gathered to discuss the future of the business. Little did Derek and Amanda know, but Owen and I had been working behind the scenes, gathering support from those disillusioned by the scandal. As Derek took the stage, his cocky demeanor betrayed no hint of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Amanda sat in the front row, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit a carefully crafted mask of confidence. But I knew better. I could see the cracks in her facade, the subtle signs of strain that belied her true state of mind. Derek launched into his usual spiel, waxing poetic about the company's bright future and innovative vision. But this time, his words rang hollow, falling on deaf ears. That's when I made my move. Rising from my seat, I cleared my throat and stepped into the aisle, commanding the room's attention with a single pointed glare. Derek, Amanda, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, I announced, my voice steady and unwavering. Derek's bravado faltered, his eyes widening as he realized what was happening. Amanda, too, seemed to shrink back in her seat, her perfectly painted lips parting in a silent gasp. For too long, you two have been running this company into the ground with your selfish, unethical behavior, I continued, my gaze sweeping over the sea of stunned faces. But no more. The truth is out, and it's time for you to face the consequences. With a nod to Owen, he sprang into action, queuing up a presentation that laid bare the sordid details of Amanda's past. The affairs, the lies, the financial misdeeds that had left a trail of destruction in her wake. As the damning evidence played out on the screen, the room fell deathly silent, save for the occasional gasp or murmur of disbelief. Derek's face had drained of color, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before my very eyes. Amanda, on the other hand, had risen to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won, Lily?" she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed." And with that, she turned on Derek, unleashing a torrent of accusations and revelations that left him reeling. "You want to know the truth, Derek?" she spat, her words cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "I'm not the only one with skeletons in the closet." What followed was a brutal evisceration of Derek's character, as Amanda laid bare his own web of infidelities, financial misdeeds, and unethical business practices. It was a scorched earth tactic, a desperate bid to salvage what little shred of credibility she had left. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and the once mighty Derek stood before us, a broken and disgraced shell of a man. As the truth came crashing down around them, the board members and clients began to turn on Derek and Amanda, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage and disgust. It was over. Their reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end, and they had no one to blame but themselves. In the chaos that ensued, I caught Derek's eye, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of regret, a silent acknowledgement of the devastation he had wrought. But it was too little, too late. The damage had been done, and there was no turning back. As Derek and Amanda were unceremoniously ushered out of the meeting, their once bright futures reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me. Justice had been served and the scales had finally been balanced. It was a hard-won victory, but one that tasted oh so sweet. In the aftermath of Derek and Amanda's spectacular downfall, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted. A burden I had carried for far too long finally cast aside. As I stepped into the role of leading the company, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time to shine, and I was going to seize it with both hands. One of my first orders of business was to implement the eco-friendly community housing project that Derek had always dismissed as a pipe dream. It was an idea that had been simmering in the back of my mind for years, a vision of sustainable living that prioritized the environment and fostered a true sense of community. As I unveiled the plans to the team, I could see the skepticism on their faces, the same doubt that had plagued me for so long. But this time, I refused to let it deter me. "This is the future, people," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. a chance to leave a lasting legacy, to build something that truly matters. And to my surprise, they rallied behind me, their initial hesitation giving way to a shared enthusiasm for the project. With each passing day, I could feel myself growing stronger, more confident in my abilities and my vision. Gone was the meek, subservient woman who had allowed herself to be pushed aside and belittled. In her place stood a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had stared adversity in the face and come out on top. It was during this time that I found myself leaning heavily on the support of Emma and Owen, my two closest allies in the battle against Derek and Amanda. "I can't believe how much you've grown, Lily," Owen marveled one night over drinks at our favorite haunt. "It's like you've finally come into your own." I couldn't help but smile, feeling a swell of pride at how far I had come. "It's always been within me, Owen," I replied, my voice tinged with a newfound confidence. I just needed to find the strength to let it out. As our eyes met across the table, I felt a spark of something unfamiliar, a connection that went deeper than mere friendship. It was as if, in the crucible of my personal war, a new bond had been forged, one that held the promise of something more. But I pushed those thoughts aside, content to simply bask in the warmth of Owen's unwavering support and the knowledge that I had finally found my footing. With each passing day, the wounds of Derek's betrayal began to heal, the pain and anger giving way to a sense of inner peace and strength that I had never known before. It was as if I had been reborn, emerging from the ashes of my old life like a phoenix, more resilient and determined than ever. And as I looked to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. The world was my oyster, and I was ready to take it by storm. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time, my chance to leave a lasting legacy and build something truly remarkable. And with Emma and Owen by my side, I knew that anything was possible. The road ahead was sure to be paved with challenges and obstacles, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly prepared to face them head-on. Derek and Amanda may have tried to break me, but in the end, they had only succeeded in forging me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. And as I stood on the precipice of a new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the lessons I had learned along the way. The battle may have been hard-fought, but it was one that I had emerged from victorious. A warrior, a survivor, and a force to be reckoned with. The future was mine for the taking, and I had no intention of letting it slip through my fingers.